Good morning, boys and girls. We're on to chapter 30 of Front Desk. Anyway, where we left off, um, Mia we had a rough day at school. She had these cheaper pants, and people were making fun of her. So she was kind of jealous of other people because they had blue jeans on. And anyway, that's where we left off last. And of course, Jason was the one making fun of him. All right. So we're on to chapter 30. Let's see where we go. Mr. Yao was at the motel when I got home. Hank had stopped paying his rent, but he wasn't moving out. He had done some research and discovered a law in California that said if someone lived somewhere continuously for more than 30 days, that made them a tenant. That gave them certain rights, including the right not to be kicked out all of a sudden, even if they stopped paying rent. Now you listen to me, Hank. You pay up right this minute, Mr. Yao pounded on Hank's door. I immediately threw the blue baseball cap onto the front desk, hid my tip jar in my room, and went out the back to join my parents. They were standing awkwardly next to Mr. Yao in front of Hank's. Mr. Yao had apparently insisted they come with him. He said it was for training purposes. Hank opened the door. Pay up or get out, Mr. Yao said, jabbing his finger at Hank. It's as simple as that. Check your facts, Yao, Hank said. I've been staying here for 6 months. That makes me a resident. You can't just kick me out a resident like that. He finished with a snap of his fingers. Mr. Yao shook his head. That can't be right. You've been here for 6 months. He turned to my parents. It's true, my parents said. How did we ever let that street rat weasel his way in here? Mr. Yao fumed. Well, this has been lovely, Hank said, closing the door in Mr. Yao's face. Mr. Yao pounded on the door, shouting, You're a loser, and this isn't over. When Hank refused to open up, Mr. Yao turned to my parents. You two, in my office now. Parents exchanged worried looks as they followed him back to the front office. For the next 15 minutes, I listened to Mr. Yao yammer on and on at my parents from my room. He said that if Hank did not pay up, we would have to pay for Hank. He was going to take the rent straight out of our salary. Anger brewed inside me, scalding hot. Chapter 31. At school, Jason continued making fun of my clothes. Even the sixth graders were in on it now. First, I managed to convince myself that it was kind of flattering that they were even talking about me. But then I heard what they said. In the bathroom, a couple sixth grade girls were gossiping. Her pants? Oh my God, have you seen her pants? They asked each other while I sat in the stall. It's like she buys her clothes by the pound. My grandmother dresses better than her. I sat on the toilet, waiting for them to leave, my heart clenching like a fist. Dear mean girls, you're right. I buy my clothes by the pound. My mom and I go over the Goodwill and we buy secondhand clothes. Clothes you probably throw away. I'm probably wearing your socks right now. Let me tell you what it's like to buy secondhand clothes. First, my mom washes it 1,000,000 times. She scrubs it with her hands and then puts it in the washer and then scrubs it again. Still, when I first put it on, I wriggle and squirm, thinking of all the girls who had worn it beside me. I used to hope it was girls like you, girls who live in big houses, girls who go on vacation in the summer. I used to think that maybe if I was wearing the same pants, I kind of went on vacation too, and that used to make me happy. Now, do you know what I think? I think I'd rather never go on vacation than be like you. Mia Tang. P.S. Floral cotton pants are way more comfy than jeans. So that's a little letter she wrote to write a letter. I'm not sure if she sent it. Maybe we'll find out here. It was so satisfying writing the letter like that. For a full second, I actually thought about putting it in my backpack and giving it to the girls at school, but I didn't. School dragged. The popular girls continued mocking me. Mr. Yao called up twice a day to scream at us. The only thing that made me tiny bit better was that somebody left $5 in the tip jar after their stay. One afternoon, while I was sitting at the front desk, a beat up old Chevrolet slowed by the motel. It inched toward us, the driver craning his neck to peer in. I squinted inside the car and saw a Chinese man. I figured he must be a friend of Aunt Ling's, looking for a blue baseball cap, so I immediately waved at him to come in. Mr. Yao wasn't here. The coast was clear. Remember, you put the hat there, means he's not here. Miss Uncle Zhu was a big man, about 6'2". 200 pounds of northern Chinese, he would said proudly in his thick Harbin accent. My dad pointed at his compact car. And you've been sleeping in that thing? Uncle Zhu had explained that he hadn't had a place to sleep for quite a while. It's been a hard couple of weeks, he said, stretching as he said the words. Well, let's get you a proper shower and a meal, my dad said, leading him towards room 3. At dinner, Uncle Zhu told us he'd been working as a janitor in a hospice. What's a hospice? I asked. It's a He thought for a minute about how to put it. It's basically a waiting room. You mean like at the airport? I asked. The day I left China, Shen had pointed to the waiting room in the arrival section right before I got on the plane. I'll see you right there in a couple days, he had said. I nodded, tears strung back of my eyes. The time will flash by like whoom, he said. Then he looked down at the floor and whispered, and when you come back, you'll all be American. No, I won't, I insisted. Will too. Nothing's going to change, Shen. Yes, it will, he said. You're going to come back wearing all those kinds of fancy clothes. Oh, Shen, if you only knew. I looked up at my floral plants, from my floral pants to Uncle Zhu. So, is that what it is? A waiting room for arrivals? I asked. He glanced at my parents as if to get their permission. They nodded at him. It's a waiting room for people who are about to pass away, he finally said. Oh. Ever so quietly, my mother packed up the last of the beef with her chopsticks and set it down onto Uncle Zhu's plate. Uncle Zhu set off for San Diego the next morning. When I heard San Diego, I dashed to the front office and jotted down another one of the addresses. Remember the car? Well, they're still trying to figure out who stole that car. Uncle Zhu promised he'd drive by and call me if he saw a Thunderbird. As my mom, my dad, and I waved to Uncle Zhu, suddenly I had an idea. I turned to my dad. What if we hide Hank, like the immigrants? I asked him. Then Mr. Yao would stop screaming at us. He would never know. My dad shook his head and said that it was way too risky. The immigrants only stayed for one night, whereas Hank lived here. Were bound to get caught. I decided to drop it. A week later, my parents received their paycheck from Mr. Yao. $140 was missing. True to his word, Mr. Yao was making us pay for Hank. $20 per day. My parents got into a big fight about what to do. My mother said we should quit, but my dad wouldn't hear of it. Quit, my dad said, and do what? You think it's any better out there? You heard the stories from all the immigrants. My mother didn't respond, but instead went into the kitchen and pulled out stinky tofu paste from the back of the cupboard. Stinky tofu paste was this disgusting concoction you could buy at the Chinese supermarket, which she ate whenever she'd been through a lot. And even though I didn't like the smell of the tofu, I still liked it more than hearing my parents fight. As my mom munched away on her paste, my dad and I sat outside by the curb, waiting for the smell to clear. That the early evening wind sighed between us. I wanted to tell him it was going to be okay, that I had a plan to save us. All I needed was $300 and even had a plan for that too. So far, I had made $30 in tips, but I didn't end up telling him. I was worried if he knew about the $30, he might take it away. Then I wouldn't be able to save us. All right, that leaves us to chapter 32 for next time. All right, see where we go. All right, have a good one.